Hello and welcome. This is the Market Wrap. I am Agam Vakil. Well, it's turned out to be a very interesting day considering we're looking at mixed moves when it comes to the broader markets. But first, let's address what's happened in the benchmarks. Let's go and take a look at the Nifty decline of around 58 points. But again, with that decline of around 0.5%, we've seen massive gains coming in the Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv. While Finserv advances by around 4.5%, Bajaj Finance up at as much as 7.7%, essentially on the back of the strong earnings that we've seen for Bajaj Finance. We'll talk about it in detail in a bit. Of course, Coal India and Sun Pharma also advances. Hindalco, on the other hand, is a reason why we're looking at weakness, and it's the same when it comes to ITC, building on the weakness that we saw yesterday. UPL and Axis Bank, among others, were showing some amount of weakness when it comes to the benchmarks. When it comes to the Nifty 500, well, evenly poised between gainers and losers, one gainer for one loser. But PTC India stands out. That's down 9%, and Gujarat State Fertilizers declining on the back of earnings, down as much as 6.5%. Some more weakness coming in Jindal Polyfilms and Bombay Rayon, Brigade Enterprises as well. But on the gaining end, specifically in the last 45 minutes of trade, we've seen a surge in Reliance Communication and Reliance Naval, along with, of course, Jyoti Laboratories on the back of its earnings. We have good gains building in for DCM Shriram as well as Crompton Greaves. So as I suggested, we're looking at mixed cues, but what do we make of these markets and the kind of moves that they're making? Let's get in Neeraj Shah to get in a perspective. Neeraj, how are you reading these markets now?
Hey, interesting. But so for once, Agam, we'll take pride in what we were talking about yesterday. Remember, we were just mentioning that there's an outside chance that the market bet could just show the first signs of improving yesterday, right. and in today's session that's happened as well. Maybe the telltale signs were there. The small cap index wasn't reacting too poorly, so that's all good. Today, the worrying part was that the index fell off quite rapidly in the second half, or in the last half an hour of trade, despite banks not falling too much. So arguably, maybe because of Brent crossing the 80 at that time or otherwise, there's some bit of pullback in the index in the last half an hour of trade, which is a bit of a worry. Again, you've been speaking about how the options activity the last couple of days has been very high. I don't know if today's options activity we take into account, because typically in a Bank Nifty weekly expiry day, options activity anyways is high. We'll get to know about this trend over the next couple of days as well. But Brent at 80 is a worry. If people may say that or rub it off that all of that is okay, but you would probably believe that that's not necessarily the case. So interesting to watch out for the next couple of days what's happened, and interesting developments on the political front as well happening while Karnataka now has a new CM. You don't know what the course of the next few days will be. Right. So the markets would probably be a bit wary on that event as well. But otherwise, par for the course. Not too many large results remaining right now as well. Tomorrow is just about Bajaj Auto. So you don't have too many result-based cues. Maybe Jarrett to the tunes of what the global markets will be doing.
Right. Well, so Brent, the political environment and the sustained turnovers in the derivative space is something that we need to watch out for. Thanks, Neeraj, for bringing out those details. Of course, that's as far as fundamentals go. Here is what our technical experts are telling us about the levels that we can keep an eye on when it comes to benchmark indices. Listen in.
The medium-term picture remains unchanged. What we've been saying since March and April, we are looking for record highs for the markets beyond 11,400 on the Nifty. But that's going to happen sometime around July, August. And the extreme short term, the markets are a bit a bit of a crossroads. We don't know if it's going to pull back a little more or if it's going to start accelerating right from today.
That said, let's shift focus to the metal sector. We had earnings for Tata Steel come through, and today we actually saw a bout of profit taking. We have Nikki Mirchandani joining us to give us an idea about what's gone down with that stock. Nikki.
Okay, so clearly a case of profit booking, 3 days of uptick that we saw, good numbers, and then you see the profit booking. Stock is down as much as 3% today. In terms of making of the numbers, we saw an operational beat coming in. We did see the net debt declining to 69,000 crore compared to 75,000 crore. But then do bear in mind the fact that this was after raising a right issue of around 9,000 odd crore. Then we also saw a dip coming in terms of the volume growth for the company on account account of the unplanned Kalinganagar shutdown, which again the analysts had factored in their numbers, so no big positives, no negative surprise in there. Investec actually went ahead and reduced the target price for this counter, and it also said that the acquisition of Bhushan Power is expected to weigh on the balance sheet position of the company, which in turn may actually add to the debt of the company going forward, on account of which we also saw some pressure creeping in, and also most of the traders on the street, or probably investors, were factoring in good set of numbers coming in from the steel companies, be it the likes of JSW Steel, JSPL, or for that matter Tata Steel.
Right, thanks Nikki. Well, we continue to track developments in the metals sector, especially on the back of the changes in the commodity prices. But we've had stellar earnings for Bajaj Finance, and what great numbers, around 40% growth and 60% growth for its top line, bottom line respectively, both beating street expectations. We have Yatin Mota joining us to give us an idea about how these numbers have panned out. Yatin, over to you.
Well, quite strong numbers coming in from Bajaj Finance, and we had the stock clearly on the roll, one of the top gainers in the large cap space. Now, if you look at the overall earnings, of course, as Agam was mentioning, almost 40% kind of a growth is what we saw. But if you look at the AUM growth, and I will talk about the internals, the AUM growth on a standalone basis was 34% for the quarter ended March. Not only that, the overall loans in the fourth quarter, the new loan book, grew by nearly 51%. So, quite strong growth that we are looking at in the consumer space when it comes to the loan growth. If you look at the profit growth in Q4, that was almost 61%. The total income growth was nearly 33%, which came in at 3,557 crores. And, more importantly, the growth and the quality of growth is mattering here. That is the reason why the stock performed. We had the gross NPAs, which stood at 1.48%, and the net NPA stood at 0.38%. So significant improvement that we saw on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So not only the asset quality improved, the overall metric, be it the loan disbursement, be it the profit growth, everything improved for the company. In fact, if you look at the consolidated AUM also, that saw growth of nearly 40%, and the consolidated profit after tax for FY18, also grew at a 46% rate. So clearly good going for Bajaj Finance, and the management also spoke with Bloomberg Quint. They are quite confident of the growth moving forward in the next year.
Yatin, thanks for joining us and giving us those details. Of course, I'm going to conclude by suggesting that we've seen an increased activity when it comes to the options data, specifically the turnovers, and a lot of writing coming through either side of the Nifty levels of around 10,700. Where does this lead the Nifty? Well, only time will tell. But for that, we'll have to wait and watch for the moves on the indices. And with that, it's a wrap on the markets. But don't go anywhere. Lots more lined up. So stay tuned in a Bloomberg Quint, and we'll keep bringing you more.